Okay, so we're heading to Mali and Lily. That's like the overarching, where we're heading in this conversation is I want to talk about the brand. I want to talk about you doing the brave thing and going out on your own. And I know we have listeners who will really
Yes.
resonate with that story. But before we get to that, I really love to start with messages from childhood and how you grew up and if creativity was a part of your home life and kind of the messages that you got about family life,
Mhm.
career, and kind of who you wanted to be, when you were little. Did you have a dream of anything about this life that you're living now?
Yes. Okay. Well, I grew up in a small town in Eastern Washington State, and my parents are both immigrants. So, my mom from the Philippines and my dad from Thailand. They're both in the medical field. My dad is a retired physician, and my mom was a retired nurse.
Yeah.
And so, they moved to the US because they wanted better education and they really wanted to achieve the American dream. So, myself, my brother, my sister being raised in small town Eastern Washington, the message was always around education.
Yeah.
So, education was key, education so important. But then there was also a big message from my dad that I will never forget because I think he started telling me this when I was in elementary school, probably, I don't know, third grade, fourth grade,
Yeah.
where we'd be getting ready in the morning. He would take me to school every morning and he would say things to me like Anne. He would call me Anne. My mom was Josie, so she was Joe.
Oh, yeah.
So I was Anne. And so was Anne. You can never depend on anyone else to take care of you except for yourself. And so I'm,
Wow.
10 years old thinking, okay,
Yeah.
dad, whatever. I don't really know what this means. But those words always stuck with me. And I joke with him today when I talk to him. He doesn't really remember saying this to me,
Yeah.
but those words were so impactful. They stuck with me all these years. And so I think that that was a huge part of why I've been so driven throughout my career, through education, through college, but really throughout my career was I knew that I had to take care of myself and meaning, financially, of course, but also
Yeah.
really just taking care of them wellness too.
Yeah. Were they healthy? Was that modeled in the home?
Yes. So mom and dad were healthy. They, always tried to work out. They played a little bit of tennis, walked a lot. My dad more so than my mom was more active.
Mhm.
He liked to walk, but they tried all of, the 70s and 80s exercise workouts when we were
I
growing
love
up.
it.
So
Jane
we were an
Fonda. Did you
active
have did you
family.
have Jane Fonda DVDs?
Probably.
Probably.
Yes,
Maybe.
yes, maybe. Yeah, that wasn't really my mom or dad, but yes, I think when we were in high school, we had those around the house. But we belonged to the court club. And so
Yeah.
it was, the kids were always kept very busy.
Yeah, and
Um,
active. What
yes,
about
and active.
fashion? What about creativity? Was there any art around your house, or did you just take to fashion?
Yes.
Because I can envision you as a younger little girl, like, being so into
Yeah.
fashion. That's how I
Yes.
imagine it was for you.
So I was always into fashion, and
Yeah.
really it comes from my mom and my aunts. So even though my mom was a nurse, she always loved fashion. I say my mom was a professional shopper.
Yeah.
And those that know my mom would 100% understand where I'm coming from. My mother loved to shop. She was a shopaholic and she loved to travel and explore. So
Mhm.
even though we grew up in this small town and they were both in the medical field, we always had family vacations where we traveled either to the Philippines or to Thailand to visit family. But at a young age, they exposed us to Europe. So when I was 13, that was the first time I went to Europe with my mom, ended up staying there for a month and
Wow.
went to school in Switzerland.
Okay.
So my parents always exposed us. They wanted us to learn about other cultures. They wanted us to just really be open minded and educated. So I think a lot of the fashion, the style, the art really comes from my parents and all the
Yeah.
travels.
And you're doing that again, you're recreating that with your girls, I feel like, like really living that lifestyle of exposing them and honoring culture.
We really try to. I mean, it's very important to both Jeff and I. Number one, to make sure that the girls know where they're from, their heritage,
Yeah.
you know, on both sides, Jeff's side of the family as well as my side.
Yeah.
But as far as art, my parents love art. They love painting. They're both
Yeah.
very creative. I remember my mom taking painting classes, my dad taking painting classes, and she used to have a small home studio in the garage
Yeah.
and floral arrangements. I mean, there was a phase in the late 70s, 80s, I'm dating myself,
I love it.
where my mom, was always creating these amazing floral arrangements with
Yeah.
silk flowers and with fresh flowers. There was a point where it was all about those silk flower hair clips.
Yeah.
And so I think my mom was one of the first to have a glue gun, and
Yeah.
she was glue gunning everything.
A glue
So
gun was so
yeah,
exciting. When you
a
went to
glue gun.
those people's houses, I don't remember that we had one because we were more like painting and crafting,
Yes.
but I had a couple friends whose moms had glue guns. It was like it's a whole
They were
thing.
incredible. You could make
Yeah.
anything. I mean, you could really glue anything together. So they were both very creative. And, today my dad is a music composer. He's
Yeah.
actually published music in Thailand. So even though they were in the medical field, they
Yeah.
always had a very creative side.
Did they want you to pursue medicine? Was that like an expectation that you would be a professional like that?
So definitely an expectation that we would be professional. Medical school, I think by the time I was in middle school, high school, they knew. I mean, I
Yeah.
remember
Cat was
hearing
out
them
of the
talk
bag.
about definitely 100% not for me. But I do remember, when I was younger, hearing them talk about going to med school. I like to say it skipped a generation because my brother, my sister, and myself, none of us went to med school.
Yeah.
But Molly, that's what Molly wants to do. She wants to go to
Oh.
med school.
That's so cool.
Yes.
I do find in
Yeah.
my friends who practice medicine, oftentimes there are parents or grandparents. Not all the time, but I find that field particularly connected. Like I have one of my best childhood friends that grew up going to the hospital with her mom, and now she's a
Mm-hmm.
practicing doctor too.
Mm-hmm.
So, well, that's good. So, did they encourage you to then find your own path when you went to college? And did you see fashion that young? Did you see it in undergrad?
So I always saw fashion and I
Yeah.
always loved it. At 15 and a half, I got my first job, and that was working for the
Yeah.
hottest retailer in the small town. They hired me
Yeah.
as a stock person. So I was unpacking boxes, steaming clothing, hanging,
Yeah.
clothes up on hangers. My parents knew that I loved fashion. My mom for sure knew, and she knew where that was coming from. And really what was important to my parents was that we picked something that we were really passionate
Yeah.
about. So, would they have loved us to go into the medical field? Probably. But they never really ended up pushing that way because they knew we weren't interested. But they did make sure that we had a great education, and they did make sure that we had the tools to, find a great job, find
Yeah.
that first job and really stick with something and do our best and be really good at it.
Yeah.
So
And
that
when you were
was
in college, did you choose like a major that you knew that you were gonna go into fashion, business or something, or
So in college, there wasn't a fashion major. I went to the University of Washington.
okay.
And so I ended up getting a double major in communications and sociology.
Oh,
So
yeah.
I
I could
always
totally
loved,
see that in you.
yes,
Yeah.
I always loved the action. So communications was broadcast journalism. So
Yeah.
for a point there, I always loved fashion, but I thought, I don't know if I can really pursue a lucrative, serious career in fashion. I really didn't
Yeah.
know how to do it at the time. So I thought broadcast journalism, that sounds exciting. I love being in front of the camera. I love putting myself out there. So I did that. I did internships while I was in college, after college. But really, my break into fashion happened when I was in San Francisco. I was doing an internship at KGO TV for the summer, broadcast
Yeah.
journalism, but I was also working at Nordstrom for the summer. And that was a big store in San Francisco. I met an amazing woman there that was a sales rep for a jewelry line. And we just started talking. We stayed connected. And years later, she ended up hiring me. And so that was my
Wow.
first job, first fashion job, aside from working retail out of college.
Yeah.
And from that position, I kept meeting the right people. That was
Yeah.
the first stepping stone. We went to a trade show in Las Vegas, the Magic Trade Show, which 25 years later, I was just at that trade show with Molly and Lily last
No
February, last month.
way.
Yes.
That's very
Um,
cool.
yeah. So from that first job, I then met the founder of my second job while we were flying back from Las Vegas. The timing was incredible. It was really great. And so,
Yeah.
and that job probably happened about a year and a half later, but we kept in touch. I was living in San Francisco. It was an amazing startup company. He was a Harvard MBA grad. He wanted somebody with like a fashion sense and someone outgoing that could sell the product. So I went to that company. That was Blue Marlin. And then after Blue Marlin, I said, I really need to get into the corporate world. So
Yeah.
after Blue Marlin, I took the leap. And that's when I went to go work at BB, which was based in San Francisco.
And you were there for years, right?
I was there for years. I actually
Yeah.
worked for BB 3 times
Yeah.
throughout my corporate career.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What do you
Yeah.
attribute navigating that corporate world? Is it finding mentors? Is it just getting lucky with the right boss? Is it advocating for yourself?
I think it's a combination of all of the above.
Yeah.
So definitely, finding mentors, finding people that believe in you,
Yeah.
people that you really connect with, people that can train you, that teach you. I was very, very fortunate that my first boss, if you will, my first boss, Kathy Lee at BB, was an incredible, incredible woman. She really taught me everything. And then her boss, who two above me, the vice president of merchandising at the time, his name's Greg Scott. And he is still one of my dearest friends. They're both very good friends. I see
Yeah.
Greg more because I've worked for Greg 4 times throughout my corporate career at 4 different companies.
Did you follow
Um,
Greg? Like he would recruit
I
you when
did.
he's yeah.
Yes. I got really, really lucky. And I'm so super grateful for that relationship and that experience because he would recruit me. There were a couple of times that I did work for him when I was in Philadelphia and I was a buyer at Urban Outfitters. And then another time here in Los Angeles when I went and worked for the Marciano brothers at Guess. And then another time when I was at Kohl's. But all the other times I reported to Greg. He was
Yeah.
my CEO and really taught me a lot about the business, but also about how to navigate and communicate with people. He was an amazing communicator, and his energy was infectious,
Isn't that
incredible.
amazing? It's such a huge part of it is just the energy that the leader creates on the team.
It really, really is. We still to this day call him our fearless leader because he just puts himself out there and knows how to assemble incredible teams of talent. So I was very, very fortunate. And he's still in the industry. So he just took on a role. He's the CEO at Express and Bonobos. So
Oh,
he's still
good
out
for
there doing his
him.
thing.
Yeah, and I bet it's
Yeah,
changed so much. Talk about
so
learning.
much.
Do you feel like you have learned as much from the bad bosses or the teams that fell apart or the shifts where you chose to leave because it wasn't the right fit?
I definitely have 100%. I have learned from the ones that were not such great leaders, as well as the ones that have been amazing leaders. And the ones that were not the best leaders, I think that a lot of it was communication style.
Yeah.
So I think the reason why they weren't great leaders is I think the communication style, maybe, the respect for those that are under them, part of the team, instead of really empowering your team and teaching
Yeah.
them and guiding them and leading them. Those that weren't the best leaders weren't able to do that, weren't able to teach and train and delegate. So I did. I look at all of my 20 plus years of experience
Yeah.
in the corporate world, and I have learned a lot, but
Yeah.
positives and negatives, that have
Yeah.
helped me.
For sure. When I speak with people about whether it's small business or sometimes I'll have clients who are in bigger organizations and we'll talk about how they're leading their teams, it's always about communication. It's always about like repairing a moment or like I'll do a coaching call preparing the person to go have the developmental conversation with a direct report. How can
Hmm.
that person get better? So basically, I'm coaching the client to have a coaching call with somebody else. But I find that so true, and it's so difficult because it's hard to have the courage and to slow down the pace of the workday to go back and say,
It is.
when we had that conversation and you said it this way, this is what happened for me. This is how I interpreted that because it's just moving so fast. And especially
It
now, the
is.
pace of business is so fast that you think, gosh, if I go have that conversation, it's a waste of time or it won't go well. But those are the kind of conversations that I find really build trust between
Mhm.
colleagues. And it's hard to
It's
do
true.
that. Yeah.
It's true, and those are the times where I think everyone learns the most.
Yeah.
I think the leader and the team, I think that's when you really do learn the most. But you're so right, in business, it happens so quickly. In the fashion industry, they're nonstop meetings. I mean, the
Yeah.
joke is, every Monday we're in a meeting from the start of the day to the end of the day, and there's just no time to talk to anybody, answer emails, make a phone call. Doesn't
Right.
exist. So I think the times where you really slow down and kind of reflect and ask the questions are
Yeah.
the times where you really learn. But it's not easy when everybody's moving so fast or
No.
rushing to the next meeting.
Yeah, for sure. So tell us about when the kids enter the scene. I know you married Jeff. I
Yes.
think y'all got married in your late 20s?
We got married in our early 30s.
Okay,
Yes,
early
yes.
30s.
Yes.
And you
So
have 2
we're
daughters. Yeah.
we have 2 daughters, and we're about to celebrate our 20-year wedding
Yay.
anniversary.
Oh,
So, in
congratulations. I
April.
love that.
Thank you, thank you. It just has gone by so fast. And then Molly and Lily are 2 daughters. Molly's 18, a senior, and Lily is 13 in 7th grade right now.
So when you had children, you're still in the corporate world,
Mhm.
you're at the height of your career,
Yep, I
but
really
when you
was.
had your girls, were you working for Greg at the time?
Yes. So when we had Molly, I was a vice president of merchandising at BB
Okay.
here in Los Angeles. And I took about 3 months off and then I
Yeah.
went back to work full time. And I loved it. Listen, I love being a mom. I love being a wife. I really do love to do it all, but I really love my career.
Yeah.
And, I really needed my career. It defined me, it really defined me. And it was a defining moment to have been able to kind of climb that corporate ladder and be a
Yeah.
vice president of merchandising. I was over all of non-apparel at the time, which was about $100 million business.
Wow.
And so for the first couple of years going back after I had Molly, it was great. I mean, Jeff and he had he still does have a corporate career, but he was
Yeah.
traveling a lot. I was traveling a lot. We were very fortunate that we had incredible, incredible help. Family would come when they could, but we had a full-time nanny that was with us Monday through Friday.
Yeah.
And for the first couple of years, it was really perfect. The schedule was down, it worked out really well. It's ironic how this happened, but when Molly started preschool,
Yeah.
that is when I felt like I had a little bit of like an identity crisis. I mean, do I want to continue having this full-time amazing corporate career? Or did I feel like I needed to be more involved and kind of have more flexibility to be able
Yeah.
to volunteer while she was in preschool? So looking back, that was definitely a big crossroads for me at
Yeah.
that point was, I saw a lot of the other moms, and this is about the time you and I met, but a
Yeah.
lot of other moms being able to volunteer at preschool because a lot of them took time off or a lot of them, just were not working.
Yeah.
And I was one of the few that had this corporate executive career
And
going,
traveling. Yeah.
traveling a lot.
Yeah.
So that's where I had to kind of make the decision, what do I want to do? And it
Yeah.
really was around that time when Molly was about 4 years old that I decided that I needed something more flexible.
Yeah.
So
And this was before Lily? Was Lily born when Molly was 5? Or
Lily
they
was born right before Molly turned 5. Yeah.
Okay. So
Yeah.
you're making the
Yeah.
decision before you've had baby number 2.
Exactly. So, I stuck with it and I stayed with it, until we had baby number 2. But I've tried to figure out ways of how do I get in there and volunteer? I
Oh,
really wanted to stay with a corporate career because, it was an amazing career. I worked so hard. I loved it. I loved my team. But I also was so aware of other moms being able to volunteer and be involved in class.
and just the flexibility. Yeah, I mean, I
The
think, like, it's
flexibility.
the benefit is that you're getting this financial security, and especially for someone like you who had your sights set on that industry and you had moved up the ladder, it must have felt very gratifying to get where you're getting, and so there's that piece of it and security in that, but the flexibility once those kids have voices and lives and they're
Oh,
meeting
yeah.
friends and like when moms
The
ask
play
me,
dates.
it's so much hard. Yeah, they're like trying to navigate their careers. I'm like, it's so much harder as the kids get older because you miss these moments of like picking them up or, and
Yeah.
then as you know, because we both have teenagers in our home, it's really hard. I traveled so much more when my kids were younger than I am willing to travel now because you just don't want
I
to miss the moments in the kitchen where it's like the random moment the teenager feels like speaking and you're like, "Wait, she wants to tell me everything right now.
It's
I'm
true.
here. You can't miss it.
Yeah. It's true. It's so true. It was. It was easier when when Molly was 1, 2,
Yeah.
before we started preschool. But I stuck with it. I stayed with it. And then it was really time to have our second child. And
Okay.
it was when I got pregnant with Lily that it was time to kind of figure out what I was going to do, freelance, have more flexibility. It was really important to me to be able to have the play dates with the other moms.
Yeah.
Socializing is so important. I am
Build
such
your
a social
community.
butterfly.
Yeah.
Community, so important. And my mom raised us that way. My
Yeah.
mom had flexibility in her career, and she was driving us to, the play dates and dropping us off and all the school activities. And I really wanted to do that. After I had Lily, I went back. It was important to me. And I was at BB. I went to Kohl's after that. Then I went
Yeah.
to New York and Company. And when I was at New York and Company, I was bi-coastal. I was spending 10 nights a month living in New York. I had an apartment in New York,
Yeah.
but I also had a very young baby after Lily was born because I realized when I did take that time off or when I had that freelance moment, being a full time stay at home mom was not really my thing either.
Yeah.
And I realized I was a much better mom, a much more interesting person, a much more engaged wife and mom to both Molly and Lily at this time when I had something outside of the house.
Yeah. I'm the same way.
I know,
I am
I know.
so like, I go crazy if I don't have
Yes,
something else.
yes,
It just
yes.
and all the kids know it.
Yeah,
It's like, "Go read a book, mom. Go to a conference. Go 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 do your
right.
webinar or go have lunch with a great friend and have a great conversation," because if it's too much focus on them, I just lose my mind.
I'm the same way,
That's good to
and
know. Yeah, it's all you can do is know yourself. It sounds like you had to have those experiences right next to each other to really dig in, and then you got Manhattan, but then it was a lot.
yeah,
I mean, I
yeah,
remember that it was a lot.
it really was. But so, yeah, really having children, having a corporate career, I learned a lot about myself.
Yeah.
And I went back and forth too. But really, for about 20 plus years straight, I was in the corporate world.
And then tell
Yeah.
me about the slowing down. And did the slowing down come from the health, having breast cancer?
Yes.
Did it come before that? Okay, so tell us about that
Yes.
moment and kind of what wake up call you got there.
Yes. So when I was at New York and Company, I was vice president of merchandising for the non-apparel division. And this is when I had, 10 nights a
Yeah.
month living in New York, had an apartment there. The BRCA genes runs in our family, BRCA. I was considered high risk because my mother had had breast cancer several times. We had regular doctor's appointments. We were monitoring, doing all the testing for preventative
Yeah.
care. And I had an appointment and it was in the morning and I was flying to New York that afternoon. I believe this was 2013,
Okay.
2014. And Jeff took me to this appointment. They did a biopsy and it came back cancerous. So
Okay.
we thought it was stage 0, but then it was stage 1.
Okay.
And because it runs in the family and there's a genetic factor right there, it was a very quick and serious treatment. So
Yeah.
that moment right there changed my entire life, career,
Yeah.
what I was doing. That was the defining moment that forced me to slow down,
Yeah.
take time off from corporate world, and really focus on what was in front of me, which was the breast cancer diagnosis.
Yeah. Was that
Yeah.
a difficult thing just to slow down? Obviously, having cancer is terrifying, but I mean, just from the perspective of living one pace and then having to live another pace. That happens in my world all the time talking to people, and I find that people really have trouble with that.
It was so difficult, Paige. It was the hardest time in my life. My life really did just kind of stop that afternoon. I was supposed
Yeah.
to get on a plane that afternoon and it just stopped. So I, had to deal with all the
Yeah.
treatment. I had to just kind of
And
stop in the middle
scheduling.
of my
Yeah,
corporate work and career and
totally.
meetings in New York. And I was also really scared because I had 2 young kids at home.
Yeah.
2 young kids, a husband that was very much into his career and growing in his career. And we were busy. Like we had it down. Everything was timed and perfect and great. But that moment made me slow down. It made our
Yeah.
whole family really have to kind of rethink how our family was going to
Yeah.
work and operate.
What
Yeah.
did you lean on the most for support? Was that your girlfriends, a community? Did you have people who had gone through this before you, maybe a friend who had
hmm
experience or
All of the above. I have to
yeah.
say, my mom and my aunts
Okay.
who had gone through breast cancer. So I had that, of course. My sister was a huge help. My husband was absolutely amazing. Jeff was incredible. He was the one that called and scheduled the doctor's appointments. I mean, that is a full-time job right there. I was so
Totally.
numb. I didn't know what to do.
Yeah.
And scheduling is very challenging. It's very difficult to schedule any appointment, right? The
Yeah.
callbacks, and I was so numb, I didn't know what to do. My community of moms in Los Angeles were incredible.
Yeah.
And this community really was my Bel Air preschool community of moms, where
Yeah.
Molly and Lily went to preschool. These
Yeah.
families are still some of the best family friends that we have
So cool.
today, and a group of several moms, but there were three in particular. We like to call our little group the Fab Four. They were there for me. Like I told them the diagnosis. We
Yeah.
met up. It was, you know, friends, family, um, friends and
Faith? Do
family.
you lean into
Amazing.
your faith?
Yes, and faith, definitely
Yeah.
faith. We were raised Catholic,
Okay.
and the power of prayer. My mother was very, very Catholic and always instilled in us pray and be thankful for the wins, pray and be
Yeah.
thankful, when you're having a difficult time, go to church, which we're not so great at, but we pray all the
Neither are
time.
we.
We're not. We go
I
on
like
Christmas
prayer
and
too.
Easter.
Yeah.
Yes, yes, but
I
I
don't
do.
think yeah.
I love prayer, and
Yeah.
we have raised the girls to pray. I mean, we get on the
Yeah.
plane and we're all doing the sign of the cross on the plane. you
Yeah.
know?
It's a touchstone. It's a
It
touchstone for
is.
you.
It
Do you feel
is.
like that time brought you closer to your mom?
100%. Definitely.
Yeah.
And it was hard for my mom though, too. I have to
Yeah.
say, it was genetic. And so she was positive as, to have the BRCA, and
Yeah, for
both.
you to have it. Yes.
Yeah, it was really hard for her. She felt guilty. She felt very guilty.
Mhm.
And my sister also found out at the time that she also had the gene as well. So that was really hard. But my mom was really great. She flew down here. We would go home. They were so great with the kids.
She got time
So
with those
I was
girls. Yeah.
had a lot of time with the girls, and I was really fortunate. Like, we had a lot of family help,
Yeah.
a lot of family help.
And during this time, is that when once you gain some strength and you have a plan, so you're a little bit more confident in your own wellness, is that when you start imagining what could be possible for your own brand? Or did it come after that? Like once you were really done with everything?
It was still after that. It was
Yeah.
after I went through treatment. I had to go through chemo. I had surgery and chemo. So for about a good year, I was taking care of myself,
Okay.
and I was taking care of the girls because I still had chemotherapy treatments. And
Yeah.
so once I was ready, once I felt like I really was ready to go back to work, I needed it for myself. It was also going to be part of the healing process. I went back to BB where I had
Okay.
been, I think 4 times before, 3 or 4 times before. I went back there, and I was fortunate enough to secure a consulting role. So I was working 3 days a week. And
Mhm.
this really was the full first time that I was very successful having a freelance consulting role that was a semi permanent role that was very consistent. It was a weekly schedule. And I was there for almost a year.
Okay.
And toward the end of that year, when the company decided that it was time, they went out of business. BB
Yeah.
ended up going out of business, right? They
Yeah.
sold their brand name. So it was that time where I really had to think about all the relationships that I had and what I was going to do in Los Angeles. There's a lot of fashion in LA, but for what I do, the corporate specialty, like these buying roles, VP of merchandising roles,
Yeah.
there are not a lot. There's a lot in New York, there's not a lot here. So I reached out to all my contacts. I started again freelancing for an amazing handbag manufacturer,
Okay.
really incredible handbag manufacturer that I had been working with, that I was buying and developing product with when I was at BB, when I was at New York and Company. So I was really reaching out to all my contacts that I'd worked with on the manufacturing side, and started working with this great handbag manufacturer. And while I was working with the handbag manufacturers, when I came up with the idea of this incredible partnership, and that's when I decided it was time to launch Molly and Lily.
Yeah. It's so much
Yeah.
more organic than I realized. Like, it really came from you living through it and you being in that relationship with the handbag
Yes, it
manufacturer.
was
It wasn't like you were sitting around going, "Oh, I can't wait to start my own brand," which is a distinction
right,
because
right.
knowing your personality, you can go and get it,
Yes,
So I
yes.
didn't know if you had, like, thought of it or if it came to you, and I think sometimes it's a little bit of a hybrid for people where it's like, it's the meeting of, "Oh, this has crossed my mind," but then it's the perfect storm of all the people in the network
It really
and
was.
the idea of meeting it, and that's a big part of what happened for you, it sounds like.
It really was. I pitched this idea to my manufacturing partner. And, in the beginning, it was going to be like small bags and card cases and wallets and cute things like that.
Yeah.
And it just kind of grew. And it was really organic, Paige. I was really fortunate to be in the right place at the right time, to
Yeah.
have the concept, to have the idea, to have the manufacturer, to know the business. Because when I was a VP, I was overseeing non apparel, which was handbags, shoes, sunglasses,
Yeah.
intimates, you name it, anything that's not a traditional piece of clothing fell under my category. So it really was great. We started
Yeah.
sampling, we came up with a small line, and we pitched it to Nordstrom.
And is this
And
full-time now? Like, are you or is it still flexible in your own time? Because now the girls are in elementary school.
they're in elementary school, and this is now full time. So
Okay.
this is now
Okay,
full
gotcha.
time. I am now full time working for this manufacturer, but also pitching and coming up and designing this concept of
I
Molly
see.
and Lily.
Yeah, so
Yeah,
that's great to note because it was both and. You had some security from
I did.
the job at the same time as you're going out and pitching the idea.
I
I think
really
people
did.
often ask me that, do I do the big leap and really leave the thing? And, like you, I was teaching at Bel Air Preschool where you and I met, and then I started
Yes.
doing the support groups for moms on the side.
Hmm.
So it's interesting. I'm a big fan of that because I feel like it mitigates some of that extreme anxiety.
I'm the same way. I think, the full time gig was
Yeah.
really what helped fund what was the passion project at
Yeah.
the time. It was what I ideally wanted to grow, but I needed this other, full time job to help me get there. So it was really great timing.
Yeah.
And once Molly and Lily started taking off, and once we were able to get into some amazing stores, it really kind of became all about Molly and Lily
Yeah. Did you ever have moments of doubt with it? I
all the
I felt like
time.
it was yeah, because for
All the
me on the
time.
outside, it was a launch. I was like, "Oh my
Yeah.
gosh, Joe," like, 1 second I saw the idea of it and, like, and then all of a sudden it was like you were in Nordstrom and now you're
I
in
have doubts. I
Anthropologie.
have
I
doubts.
mean
I have doubts every day,
you
all the
do?
time.
Okay.
Oh my gosh, yes. Oh my gosh.
So, what is the difference between because you have this corporate background and now it's a successful brand, but
Yeah.
what
Yeah.
tell us about the doubts and the difference in those 2 experiences.
It's very different. I mean, we are still a tiny baby company. We're a baby
Yeah.
company. We're in about 500 stores internationally, but we're still a
Yeah.
baby company compared to the corporate businesses that I was running and managing. $100 million business. We're not anywhere near there.
Yeah.
But we're in some of the best stores in the country and internationally, Anthropologie, Nordstrom, FabFitFun, Stitch Fix, and
Yeah.
we, direct to consumer and amazing websites, all of these great places, Oprah's favorite things, all these great things. But we are a small company and we run very nimble. We have to
Yeah.
run very, very nimble. And when you're in a big corporate company, you have a beautiful travel budget. You
Yes.
have, great
Yeah.
travel budget. You're traveling internationally, you're traveling to New York,
Yeah.
staying at nice hotels, like all of these incredible things. You know, Being a small startup, we have to be very nimble. We don't
Yeah.
spend like that. We don't have those types of budgets. So, there was a lot that I missed out of that. A great salary and bonuses and benefits,
Yeah.
all of those things. But where I am today, I love it. I have the flexibility,
Yeah.
I have the creativity. I am still in the fashion industry. I am making a mark. I'm growing a brand
Yeah.
named after my two daughters that is available internationally. So
Yeah.
it's a little bit of a trade-off. I mean, it's different. The corporate world to having a startup is very different.
Yeah. Is
Um,
that the risk? Is it just so much closer to home? It's like there's no security of this big corporation, even though that's not really secure. But it feels to me like when it's your own thing, you actually could see it potentially totally failing. Whereas when it's a
yes.
corporation that's been
Yeah.
around, it's like, okay, this thing isn't
Yes.
going anywhere. Is that the
Definitely.
main? Yeah.
That is definitely the main difference for me, when
Yeah.
I mean, and listen, large companies go out of business all the time. We've
For
seen
sure.
so many
For sure.
so many retailers close their doors since the pandemic. It's a very different time in retail today than it was when I was working full time and
Yeah.
even pre-pandemic 5 years ago. But, there was just much more stability being in a
Yes.
corporate. It felt much more stable, stable, scheduled teams. Like I did it for
Reliable. Yeah. You're
reliable.
going to
I
do
did it for
that.
20 plus years.
Yeah.
So, doing your own thing, I mean, listen, we were fiscally responsible, but doing your own thing, you look at every dollar spent on your
Yeah.
airfare to New York or the hotel you're staying in or that dinner that we're having. It's very different. So
And I
I
would
think,
imagine finding people, hiring and firing and, finding your
yes,
team.
yes, very, very different. But what I love about what I do now is listen, I can work from home. I
Yeah.
can go downtown to the warehouse, to our office 3 days a week, 5 days a week, 1 day a week. It really depends on the meetings and the team meetings that I have.
Yeah.
So
Did
the flexibility is great.
did you have clear goals, like you wanted to be in certain stores, or were you much more open about it? Like, "Okay, we'll see where this goes," or was it very targeted, like, "I will get to the top of this. I will be the best of this." How did you
It was
approach it?
it was it was very targeted, very, very
Okay.
targeted. So when we developed the first Molly and Lily line, my goal was we need to get it into Nordstrom for
Okay.
sure. And that's huge. I mean, I tell my friends, I tell my daughters, I tell my husband, I tell the team that we were really fortunate that our first account was Nordstrom. Like that just doesn't really happen. But
Yeah.
because it happened to us, I think we kind of take it for granted. And
Yeah.
7 years later, we're still at Nordstrom and they've been an amazing partner. So that was a huge accomplishment. And I think the fact that we were able to get into Nordstrom, that first delivery in October 2017 really helped position the brand and
Yeah.
really helped us grow significantly because being at Nordstrom, other retailers see you. Being at
Yes.
Nordstrom, there's so much press that goes along with
It
that. You know,
legitimizes your brand.
it
Yeah.
it really, really does. It does. It validates who you are. It
Yeah.
validates that, oh, this brand is good enough to be a Nordstrom. And, fashion editors would see our bags on the Nordstrom website,
Yeah.
and we would get so much organic free press in
Yeah.
the best magazines. And, social media, once you start posting all of that, Nordstrom was really an amazing account for us to get
Yeah.
into. And that really helped us grow Molly and Lily.
Yeah. What do you do with that feeling, that responsibility feeling when you have your own business, especially knowing that you needed to slow down for your own wellness and honoring your wellness like you do? And, I saw you change your life, so it's like
Mm.
you have flexibility. Your whole entire life is your family, even though we're talking about business. Like you're such
Right.
a family person. So how do you handle that, like, up at midnight thinking about your business and your brand and all the things you have to do with
Yeah.
this more grounded and mature and holistic approach to your life? Like, those 2 live side by side. How do you
Hmm.
handle the tension of those 2, and how does the wellness win out? Because I know you do a
Yeah.
great job of balancing it, and I know how healthy you are.
Thank you. Scheduling. It is a lot of scheduling. It is a
Yeah.
lot of notes. I will wake up at 3 in the morning. I will have
Yeah.
an idea. I will think about something that didn't get done and I will put it in my notes. I mean, I live by this phone, the notes constantly. Like I
Yeah.
have so many notes going. For me, it's about scheduling, it's about planning. And I am such a planner too. So I'm
Yeah.
constantly planning for the business. I'm constantly planning for my social life, for my family's life, school, everything. So, it is really, it's time management. It's having, I
Yeah.
think, really strong time management skills, which I will say I learned in the corporate world. That I learned in the
Interesting.
corporate world.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's such a sign of our times too. Like sometimes I think in our culture we want to throw the baby out with the bathwater and change everything and throw out all the institutions and the systems, and that's not a bad idea. Everything needs to be revamped. But just that example that you gave, that actually what you learned from the corporate world, what you
Mhm.
learned from these kind of more old school institutions is exactly what keeps you nimble. It's exactly
It
what's keeping you innovative and creative. And I think it has to be both and, it has to be that we take what we learned from kind of the older way of doing things to push us into this new future that I hope can be healthier for everybody and not as
right.
much burnout.
Yeah, yes. And I think because I came from that corporate world and I wanted the flexibility and I wanted these things that I wasn't able to have in the corporate world, I am really making sure that I take advantage of it now. I
Yeah.
balance the time. I get the work done. I try to get the work done, literally during the day, work business hours, but I have the flexibility. I can be up late. I get up at 5 in the morning and
Yeah.
I'm sending emails to the East Coast. I get up at 5 in the morning and I'm thinking about everything we need to do for the week. So it is nice to be able to have flexibility, but it is structure within that flexibility. It's the structure, it is time management, it's a lot of notes, it's my to do list, it's my calendar. I couldn't live without my
Yeah.
calendar. And that was all learned in the corporate world. That
Yeah.
was all learned in the corporate world. And, listen, I have friends that have started small businesses that never really worked in the corporate world.
Yeah.
And I know that that piece is much harder
Yeah.
to kind of manage.
Yeah. Do you have any regrets about your career path or anything you would do differently now that you're kind of on this side of really feeling fully like you are expressing yourself and you have the good balance and you're proud of what
Yeah.
you've built? Would you have done it any differently?
I'm super grateful for where I am, but I have to say now that my kids are older,
Yeah.
because I've had the business for 7 years now, we're growing. I have to say though, I'm so proud of it. I love having Molly and Lily. We're going to keep growing. There's new avenues and new ways of doing business, but there is a part of me that has come full circle where I start to miss the corporate world.
Oh,
Now that my
interesting.
kid yeah,
Yeah.
now that my kids are older, now that Molly's leaving for college,
Yeah.
there's a part of me that's like, I see some of my colleagues and where they are today and I'm like, "Ah, maybe I would have been a CEO by now."
Yes.
Maybe no,
Yes.
or really kind of continue to climb that ladder. So,
Yeah.
um
Would you
it's
go
very
back?
interesting.
Has it crossed your mind to go back?
I think about it. I do think
Yeah.
about it. I've
Just in an
thought about it.
open-minded way. Yeah.
I'm very open-minded. I mean, I think in
Yeah.
an ideal world, I would continue to grow Molly and Lily,
Yeah.
for sure, keep that, but maybe consult, maybe
Yeah.
also have a little bit of space in the corporate world as well,
Yeah.
you know?
How do you think it's changed, especially fashion industry? Like, what's the biggest, and you're talking to someone who does
Yeah.
not know the fashion industry, as you know. Um,
Yes.
but I feel like it's one of those industries that's really, really different. So when you think about returning back to it, what is one of the differences that stands out to you?
So it's really interesting because I think that since the pandemic 5 years ago, the fashion industry has been so completely different, 100%
Yeah.
different. The fact that buyers were able to work from home for really the last 5 years, we never would have that opportunity. I mean, I would stress out about walking in, 5 minutes late into the office as a
Wow.
buyer, as an
Yeah.
executive. And, you know, the last 5 years, a lot of companies and still now, a lot of companies are still have a hybrid schedule
Yeah.
where the buyers are able to be remote. So, that is the biggest difference.
Yeah.
But what I'm seeing today is I'm seeing a lot of those companies this year now are having the buyers and everyone report back into the office. So
Mm.
that would have been the biggest difference in the last 5 years is the flexibility that I
Yeah.
really wanted at the time that I didn't have. So I would always joke and say, "Oh my gosh, my team, the younger team that kind of fell into this, they were still working in the corporate world.
Yeah.
It was post pandemic or during the pandemic. I say they had the best of it because they were able during the pandemic to have these amazing corporate jobs, right? Full
Yeah.
benefits, salary, all of that, but they were able to work from home. And
Yeah,
that was
totally.
so amazing because that would have never existed pre-pandemic ever,
Yeah.
you know? So that would have been the biggest difference.
Yes, I love that. I also
Yeah.
just think as your kids get older and even for somebody who doesn't have kids, as our human development, we go through the stages. So as we get older, what's resonating with me about your story is that you can change. You can go back. It's like
Yes.
different seasons and sometimes I forget to think like that. Sometimes I'm
Yeah.
like, "Oh, I'm going to do this and it's going to be even though I'm helping people to be open-minded in my own life, I can get kind of
Mhm.
like step by step by step and if I make this decision and I regret it, I can't go back or what if I do this or it's just I just took a
Mhm.
part-time job facilitating groups this year. I've been doing it for over a year now, but at first when
That's
I had
great.
that opportunity come across my desk, I was like, "Well, what if I'm, responsible for going to facilitate a group?" It's all local right now. It's all in Los Angeles.
Mhm.
And I have another opportunity, because I haven't been beholden to reporting to someone in years. I mean, like
Right.
since I was a preschool
Right.
teacher. But now to your point about structure, I love it because it gives me this structure and I go and facilitate the group, but I'm not in charge of booking the venue and I'm not in charge
Mhm.
of Xeroxing, copying the worksheets, and it's this beautiful group of women who I've come to love. So it's been fantastic, but it was initially like, I don't know if I can commit to that because it's going to clip my wings. And then really it's actually made me feel even more liberated to do my own thing because it gives me a base.
I love that. I
Yeah.
feel those opportunities give you a base and they also put you out there with other people. I
Yeah.
think that is a piece of what I miss, not being in the corporate world. You're with big teams. You're
Yeah.
with people that you continue to learn from.
Yeah.
So when you go to these seminars or when you go into these different
Yeah.
groups, you're learning from all the people there.
Yeah.
So that's a part that I miss.
Yes.
Having a small team, having a
Yeah.
small company, being a startup, that's the piece that I miss. Is I
Yeah.
have to make sure that I position myself with the right people, with like-minded people or business people that I can continue to learn from.
Yes.
Yeah.
We had this great conversation in one of those groups that I mentioned because I'm working with a lot of entrepreneurial type women and they were talking about the work that you have to do to get the work. And so when you're a
Mhm.
small business, it's like so much work to get in front of the right people.
Yes.
When you don't have the backing of that big, brand recognition or the big company.
Yes.
And that is what comes to mind when you just shared that about your life. It's like all this work and knowing who to talk to and how to reach out and just to get to the place where you can get the big contract, the next big
It's true.
contract.
Yes, it's a lot of work. It's a lot of behind the scenes. It's a
Yes.
constant hustle. That's what I say. It's a
Yeah.
constant hustle. I love it. There's never a dull moment, that's for sure. And it comes in waves. Sometimes it's so
Yeah.
incredibly busy. And other times I'm like, oh, I can go to hot eight yoga right now,
Yeah.
which I love because that's the wellness piece that I really yearn for. And that's the
Yeah.
balance that I really want is to take care of myself physically, emotionally, socially too.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
So what is inspiring you these days? How do you well, 2 questions. How do you stay inspired for Molly and Lily? Like, do you
Mhm.
have protected time where you're just on a walk or seeing a movie or going to lunch with friends and seeing what people are wearing? So I wanna know where inspiration comes from, and I also wanna know what you're inspired to on the inside of you just in life right now. Like, what are you
Yes.
looking
Yeah.
forward to? What are you enthusiastic about at
Yeah.
this particular moment in your life?
Well, for Molly and Lily for the business, what I love is all of our bags now are crafted in recycled vegan leather. So when we
Yes.
first started the business, they were in vegan leather, but they were not recycled.
Okay.
So we're constantly researching and talking to factories and sourcing new materials that are better for the environment.
Yeah.
So now that we're at 100% recycled vegan leather, which means our handbags, the materials, no animal products, and each of the bags, the recycled vegan leather, is made from recycled water bottles.
Oh,
So,
good
what
for you,
excites
Joe.
me,
Yeah.
yeah, so that's something that is fairly
Yeah.
new. And I think we got to 100%, 2 years ago. And what's really, really great is, what keeps me motivated is researching new ways to develop product that is current. It's
Yeah.
current, it serves a purpose. The purpose is, all of our bags were designed So busy women could get through their day,
Yeah.
multitasking. You look chic and fashionable, but the bags are functional.
Yeah.
So now what's exciting is they're sustainable, they're crafted in recycled vegan leather. So we're constantly looking at new ways that we can do better for the environment
Yeah.
and new ways that we can learn and teach and create a better product.
Yeah.
So that's
Yeah.
what keeps me motivated for sure. And
Right.
inspiration is everything every day. It's shopping, it's new, it's vintage, it's
Yeah.
European runways. It is looking at what's currently working in our stores right now that we're selling to. And also staying motivated is really getting into more amazing stores, more
Yeah.
amazing accounts. So we have a
You've got
handful
your
of accounts.
targets. Yeah,
We have
you've
our
got your
targets. Yes, we
intentions.
do.
I
We
love
do.
it. So I want to end
Okay.
on this question about loving fashion and also working in fashion. Do you
Hmm.
feel that working in the business and always being, as you say, hustling, and kind of ideating about the business, does that impact your love for the business? And I'm just going to put this side note. I ask that because a lot of people ask me that. If I'm making my passion and my interest my business, how does it change how I interact with my passion? And do you feel like
Got
it
it.
dilutes it, or that you resent it or you get burnt out on it?
Well, we definitely get burnt out on it. What I do is my passion,
Yeah.
but there are a lot of very unglamorous parts of it,
Yeah.
right? So there are a lot of things that I have to do that are not so fun, that are not so glamorous, even though it's fashion. But overall, there are so many amazing things that I get to do: meet new people, open new accounts, travel, get inspired, talk to buyers. It is my passion, and I
Yeah.
still really wholeheartedly love it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what I tell people too. Cause in my world, I like to ask that question, what would you be doing anyway, even if you weren't
Right.
paid for it?
Yes.
And to
Yes.
me, like in my world, as you know, I love reading and I love talking to people and
Mhm.
meeting people and helping people and teaching and guiding. I mean, it's all stuff that I would do anyway. So I haven't found that pursuing that professionally has diluted or, depleted any of my energy for doing that personally. It's just a
Mhm.
matter of self-care,
It is.
and taking your hot yoga A class.
Yes, very
For me,
very
that's
well
core
said,
power.
yes.
Yeah.
I mean, there are some days that I love what I do. It's perfect.
Yeah.
There are other days where, sure, we get stressed, we get frustrated, but overall, in general, I'm so grateful that I get to do what I love.